Hey folks, in this interview, I get to speak with one of the newest inductees into Canon's Explorer of Light program. This is Twit. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, I have skateboard and sports photographer Atiba Jefferson on the show. We're going to be talking about, obviously, skateboard and sports photography, but also how his induction into the Canon Explorer of Light program has affected his career, his photography, and some opportunities that he has had up until this point, because up until this point, he's been a successful photographer, and now he's got some booster rockets on him, courtesy Canon. So Atiba, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks so much for having me.
No, it's good to have you on. It is good to have you on. I'm excited to talk about the world of the Explorer of Light program and how did you get into that stuff, and how is it impacting your career working with a gigantic company like Canon? But before we do that, I want to talk about you and just your world. So, what's the Antiba coffee table or elevator speech that you give to people when they say, "Hey, man, what do you do for a living?" And you're at some swanky LA party or something.
I would just be, my whole thing is I'm originally from a small town in Colorado, Manitou Springs. It's about 15 minutes outside of Colorado Springs. And I moved here 25 years ago to San Diego because I love skateboarding and knew I wanted nice weather. And I knew I wasn't good at skateboarding, good enough. So I was always shooting photos of my friends. And in high school, I just fell in love with seeing a black and white print being made in the darkroom. And I knew this was something I loved. I never thought it was something I would do for a living. It was just something I loved. But I knew living in California was going to enable me to skate every day. And, you just want to leave your hometown. It gets a little small after being there for 18 years. So, I have an identical twin. He's a graphic designer. He got a job at Transworld Skateboarding. And, I just started hanging out there, lucky enough to assist the photo editor there. I also had a love for basketball. I still do. And all these things kind of happened within 4 years where I was assisting the Laker team photographer. And everything just kind of took off then. Assisting taught me a lot. And it's just, being a photographer who wanted to concentrate strictly on shooting things I was a fan of has led me to all the best seats to any event that I wanted to be at. And, that is one of the craziest things in my life, to be able to have seen Kobe win every championship, to see Tony Hawk do a 900, to, photographing some of my favorite musicians, whether Drake or U2. There's so many of these opportunities that I've been able to make happen through a camera. Probably the other craziest thing is that I'm able to buy a house off of it too. So,
in California, no less.
Nice. And buy my mom a house last Christmas for her in my hometown where I grew up was a huge honor. So photography has done good for me for sure.
That is really cool. And it sounds like the dream that a lot of photographers have of, relocating to California and taking photos of exciting celebrities and sports figures, et cetera. And you oversimplified it, right? It's not that easy to just, okay, I just assisted here and then I got these gigs and all that. It's a path, right? And it's also dependent almost wholly on the quality of your work, which is outstanding. So photographers that want to move in that direction, they want to be like, they want to buy a house for their mom using their camera. How do they get into that world? How do they start getting their work seen by people that'll hire them to go shoot Drake and that kind of thing?
Well, it's a different time now because you have social media, right? This is like a whole new world. Whereas before it was you had to contact the photo editor at the magazine you wanted to shoot with. The editorial used to be the direct way to get your work seen easily because you know, editorial is a smaller budget, so they're always kind of using newer photographers that aren't big photographers. Now it's just different. Now it's almost easier because you can, if you shoot an amazing photo and you were to hashtag and at the musician or the athlete or the skateboarder, and it's great, they're going to repost it, right? But getting access to those people is always going to be a way that you can't really technically say this is, how to get from point A to point B,
Yeah.
Obviously contacting ad agencies, contacting record labels or companies that the athletes work for, that's where you really start. But, you know, I say I got really lucky. I hate to say that. I mean, I think my passion for photography comes out in my photography. So, knowing that I love making photos and knowing that I want to make the best photos possible and paying attention. Like I didn't go to traditional school I didn't go to photography school. I assisted these masters and really paid attention to what they were doing, but also at the same time paying attention to photography, period. And then stepping away from looking at other people's photography and just being creative of my own. That was a big thing for me, not to, I got to a point where it's like, don't just rip off people, try and think of stuff on your own. And that always helped me, but always being willing to experiment and it go, okay, if one thing looks like this way, how would it look 180 degrees different? That's the way I approach photography.
Yeah, and you say luck, but I think, and I'm sure you would agree with this. Yeah, part of it is luck, but luck, there's luck, and then there's the having the skill and the awareness to capitalize on the opportunity
100%.
that presents itself.
Yeah. It is luck, but it's also taking advantage of opportunities. I've always done that. I've always tried to say no, and I've always tried to work the hardest I can when an opportunity was presented.
Yeah. It's interesting that the creative. You mentioned creativity and just sort of looking at other things and being inspired by that. To newer photographers that are just jumping into the world and trying to figure out what their genre is. Do they want to be portrait photographers or sports or celebrity or landscape, whatever? How do they hone that? Because not everyone knows. Some people come in, they're like, yeah, of course, I just want to shoot pictures of babies. That's it. But some people just don't know. They just like photography and they don't know what genre that they want to gravitate towards. What would be your advice on how to hone that?
It's funny. It's kind of like that movie Soul where there's this missing, you got to finish it. There's this missing piece to finding out what you want to do in life.
Ooh.
I mean, it's tough because I've talked to people how do you know what you want to do in life, right? It's really about what excites you without being, it's like love, right? You can't really say what love is. You can't describe it. It's a feeling, right? So that's the thing. You got to find that thing that excites you. I love playing video games. There's a lot of people that don't. Playing video games. Can I describe why I love playing? I don't know. I just like, as soon as I'm playing, I'm in a zone, or I play piano, right? It's really about being in that zone, and it's being unconsciously happy,
Yeah.
But as a photographer, you just got to think about, like, I think about something that like a moment that I want to capture. That's what I know I want to photograph. Like last night there was lightning and I was just like jumped up, went to my car, grabbed my tripod, grabbed my camera, and I was on my deck shooting lightning. I love lightning. Like I think it's amazing. It's beautiful. Do I want to be a storm chaser? No, not really. But like, that's just photography. Like to me, I could be photographing family portraits. I'm still gonna love it. I just know I'd rather see skateboarding and basketball at the end of the day.
Well, you haven't seen, what is it, Wonder Woman 1984 yet, right? So
No.
there's a scene in that, speaking of lightning, there's a scene in that movie that is lightning related. I won't give it away, but when you see it, you're going to remember this conversation. You're like, okay, that's what Frederick was talking about. I want to talk a little bit about the Explorer of Light program and how your induction, like I said at the intro, you're one of the latest inductees into that program. What does that mean for you? Was it a lifelong goal of, okay, I've made it when I get into this program, or was it just kind of another trophy on the Antiba shelf?
For me, it's completely the final chapter to like my career.
Oh wow.
I grew up in skateboarding, and big things for skateboarders is to get a pro shoe, it's to get a pro board. That's the benchmark. I mean, you want to even be able to win like an X Games or something like that too. I'm not into photo contests because I think it's hard to judge art, but like you want a sponsorship, right? And I've had shoes on companies with my name on them. I've had a board with my name on it. So I've done these things. Like I've been in 3 video games as a character. I've done these things that all my peers in pro skating have done, but I haven't had a camera sponsor. And that's so weird. Like I've had so many endorsements, so many different things that I've been lucky to have, but cameras has just been the hardest one. And this is 25 years later in my life, and I have great friends that are great photographers. Andy Bernstein and Keith Lazinski, like my peers who have these endorsements, but I just never did. And it's just been a couple months since October, and I've done stuff with Canon in the past, and I've used their products for over 20 years, and this has been such a life-changing experience already in the 3 months. The exposure and the support they've given me. I mean, that's why this year has been so amazing for me, because of this opportunity coming to me. So for me, it's unbelievable, but they really want to make sure my cameras are good. I have whatever I need. It's unbelievable. And they're also, letting me talk to people in R&D, and I'm able to kind of give my input on what can make the brand and product better. And it's such an unbelievable dream come true. I can't even express how stoked I am on the opportunity.
That you've got to be.
Yeah, it's also one of those things. There are the other companies out there, but I'm so lucky that I landed with the best one, because taking a step back, I would have been so stoked to get recognized for the work I've done for 25 years by a camera company, but it's so awesome to know that I got recognized by the best one.
And I want to talk about that because, people listening to this are coming into or listening to this with all sorts of brands, from Lumix to Fuji to, Sony, etc. You've been, like you said, you've been shooting Canon for 20-ish years or so. Not to do us, or them versus this brand, because it's an unwinnable. It's almost like politics or something, right?
Yeah.
But for the kind of work that you do, what is it about the Canon brand that fits so well that allows you to make these iconic images that you create?
Well, it's just the selection of gear that they make, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really the fact that they've always progressed. Like I started shooting film, and I've gone from, film 35 millimeter to medium format because it's standard, right? To digital medium format to DS. Like I've done it. I've shot it all. I know it really well. And what Canon has always done is been able, even in the film days, they made the fastest sequence camera. They always will make the biggest DSLR megapixel with the 20 mega. It was a game changer when they came out with the 20 megapixel, and they
Yeah.
keep doing that. And their lenses are their autofocus is unbelievable, and it's always been a leader. Um, and the fact now with this R5 is just a game changer. And that's not even talking about their video cameras, which also are amazing. They know how to progress and not be scared to take risks and change. Some of these other companies feel like they can make a camera that is good and that's it. It's like, no, Canon has been pushing itself and doing things like, to me, I always said a 5D is the one camera I could have for the rest of my life. It's a great camera, it's a great chip, and then here we go with the R5 that's just unbelievable, and this is someone who shot digital medium format, and these cameras really, I mean, they've just come so far in really a short amount of time. So that's the thing with Canon. It's the progression, and that's what sets them apart from the rest.
Yeah, and it's one of the questions that I'm sure you get a lot is from people that, like, again, photographers that are just entering into the space or the industry is, hey, Atiba, what camera should I buy, or what's the best camera out there? Obviously you love Canon, right? So in the Canon world, if someone's just entering in and they ask you that blanket high level 30,000-foot question, where do you guide them?
Well, that question that's a loaded
It's
question,
loaded,
right? Because it's like, do you want to make money off this camera? Do you, like, how serious do you want to take it? That's like me going, oh, I want to be a race car driver. Okay, do you want to get a Civic or do I want to get a Lamborghini, right? It's
right.
like apples and oranges. But what I always say is, used to be a 5D. I always say, if you want a camera that you could have for the rest of your life, don't go with the less expensive, right? Because if you really know you're going to have a passion for photography, you're going to want some good stuff if you can afford it, right?
Yep.
You're going to want, like, I always say a 24 to 70 2.8, but now I'm really into the 28 to 70 2.0. If I had one lens to tell people to get, I would say that, but I also say get the 2.8 because the quality is light and day. And I mean, the quality is night and day as far as, like, the amount of light coming in. And I always go, you don't have to go with the biggest chip camera. I would say if you want to start, you could start with the R6. But I always do stress, me personally, full frame. I'm a full frame, wide open aperture. If you don't have the money, then you can scale down, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, because great photos are going to happen as long as you know how to use your camera, regardless of the light restrictions. That's the biggest thing, right? It's like if a lens is only a 5.6, your back's against the wall a little bit versus a 2.8.
And when you say full frame, like when you stress go full frame versus APS-C or micro four thirds or whatever, why full frame? What's the reasoning?
The quality. It's just, but this is me coming from a standard of quality that is, like, really high, but it's just the quality. It's just, it is better. I love, I have it right here. I love the G5X. This point and shoot is unbelievable. It's great. But, when I have it compared to my R5, I'm always like, oh, but, that's, like, I always say, I can take this camera anywhere and I can make some magic with it. So it's not the tool, it's the carpenter in that way. But if you have, a really sharp axe, you're going to be able to cut some really big trees. So
yeah, absolutely. And a quality axe that's going to last you. Don't buy a cheap axe that you're gonna have to keep replacing. I mean,
so many people have done zooms with like this same camera setup, and they're like, "How does it look so amazing?" I'm like, "It's full frame. I have my lens open to 2.8.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like
Yeah.
what does
Well,
it. So,
the camera that I'm on is a old Micro Four Thirds GH4 with a 12 to 35 2.8,
right.
and it's at 2.8. So, for this kind of stuff, I think, it's,
Yeah.
you
You're
know,
good.
yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, and I love Micro Four Thirds. I love the Micro Four Thirds format. I have full frame as well on the Panasonic side, the S1. And, I think a lot of this stuff, it comes down to how it's almost like operating systems with camera or with computers. Some people like the Windows based operating system or Android versus iOS, etc.
Yeah.
And because cameras are so good these days, I think people start using the excuse of, well, I'm not going to get that one because of this, and then they end up getting the ultimate camera and never using it.
And that's
Because
the big thing. Like, you got to realize like what kind of budget you have. And,
yeah,
I try not to talk anyone into a $5,000 setup if they don't have $5,000.
right,
But I have a friend who he's a musician, and we did a Zoom, and he was blown away. And I honestly, yeah, I was like, here are two different options, because he's like, I just want it for Zooms. Your look is amazing. I was like, here are the options, and he still was like, I'm gonna go with the 2470 2.8.
yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
that's really cool, to see someone want to take that commitment to their camera product.
No, for
But
sure.
it'll always pay off for sure in the long run.
Well, one final question I have for you is
Yeah.
as we record this is the last week in 2020. It's the 28th of December as we record these bits. How has this last year, 2020, impacted your sort of business? Not aside from the Explorer of Light program and all that, but the whole pandemic and being restricted in some areas and then enabled in other areas. How did it all net out for you? Are you better at the end of the year or worse?
Um, Me as a photographer, social media is a thing, and it's a way for your photographs to get viewed. And I don't have like a huge following, but I do have a following that's pretty big. And there was some opportunities at the very beginning, companies that I worked with that really helped me kind of weather the storm when we weren't shooting, just doing posts and stuff. So that was a huge thing, which is not your typical way to make money as a photographer.
Right.
But I feel very lucky for that. And, as far as business, yes, it was crazy. It really hindered a lot of things in the sense that I was not able to do these shoots. And then when we came back, it became really tricky. I went from being able to, on a commercial shoot, having 3 assistants to having 1 in a Digitech. So
Hmm.
I had to kind of pivot with it. But also, what it made me do is look at opportunities that I wasn't using before and taking advantage of them. So I was able to create some work, and I dived really deep into skating and shooting skating because that's a little more renegade. So it was rough, and it's still rough, and I'm like hyper paranoid. I wear masks, I wash my hands. I'm like
Yeah.
very, flying is very stressful. But I also am single without a family, so I don't have the things to think about like other people.
Right.
So I feel very lucky in that opportunity. I could kind of take, any low hanging fruit that is maybe a little risky and still turn it into an opportunity. So, you know, now that we're back, the last month has been really busy in the sense of, people need assets. And I think next year is going to be a really good year for photographers because people are behind 6 months on everything. So I think you're going to see people really hit the ground running in the commercial world, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's been a tricky year. There's a lot of things that have changed me as a person. George Floyd and that whole movement, Breonna Taylor, has made me look at things different with the voice and the camera that I have and use that to spread awareness and make this a better place. I've gotten really into volunteering. That's one of the things about 2020, us being isolated on our own when we were really on lockdowns made me look at myself and go, what can I do to make a difference and make this a better place? And not always be so focused on me and my career and how I can grow. It's like, no, let me make a difference in the world. So I've been really, a changed person. And I don't think that would have happened without this pandemic.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think it has changed, pretty much the entire planet, I think. Yeah. And a lot of things a lot of ways that we do things, and entire industries have been shifted a little bit positively and negatively. So that's a whole nother conversation. As we wrap this up, man, what are your plans? Like, for the beginning of, we're at the end of this year. What does 2021 look like?
2021, I really want to focus. I have a book idea that I'm working on, and I'm getting really close to finishing up. It would be my first book. So I really want to get that wrapped up. I really actually need to take today and really focus on it. But yeah, I have a music video that I'm super excited that I'm directing with a friend that's coming out. And then,
nice.
Just to try and stay busy, there's a lot of things like shooting basketball. I'm not doing as much because it's really, really locked down. So I'm missing out on a lot of that. So I hope that will kind of change, shooting media day for the Lakers and Clippers was a regular thing, and the NBA awards. There's so many things that were regular, but, just try and, do that stuff and work really with Canon and making any ideas that I have happen, and hopefully get through this so I could be able to have I have a photo show idea that I really want to get going. So there's a lot of creative energy that's ready to be released during this, after this pandemic. So
I love it. Yeah. And I think everyone is going to say that, myself included. There's a lot of stuff.
Traveling. Oh my gosh. I just want to travel.
I know. I just want to hug somebody,
Seriously. High five, have a shot,
something. Yes, yeah. Yes. Go to dinner.
I was supposed to go to the Olympics, which was a huge thing and something that, I never even thought I would go to, and skateboarding was going to bring me there. So I'm hoping to get a rebate on that. And that's probably, fingers crossed, the biggest thing for me.
Knock on wood. Well, cool, man. So if people want to connect with you, maybe hire Instagram, you, contract you.
Yeah. Instagram at Atiba Photo and www.atibaphoto.com. Those are my, there's my emails on my website. So it's a direct line. I'm pretty easy to find. Awesome.
Well, cool, man. Well, thank you for taking the time. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. It's always inspiring to talk to, it's explorers of light, but it's really interesting to talk to a newly minted explorer of light to see how it's impacting your world.
It's Canon. It's and they're such a family, and they've showed so much support to me since we started this relationship. It's like I will never touch another camera again. So
very cool. That's a marriage. It's a permanent marriage. I love it. Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah. All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your week. Have a safe New Year's Eve, and if I don't talk to you, have a good start to the 2021 season.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see each other in person next year.
Yeah, we will. We're in the same state. It's a tiny state, right? So
yeah, it is. It's not that long.
It's not that long. Yeah, that's my way. Cool, man. All right, thank you,
and I'll
you too. I'll be in touch. This is Twitter.